Hi everyone, okay, this is the next video in the series on lessons from Capablanca. This time we're gonna look at a chapter entitled Some Winning Positions in the Middle Game. In the position before us, it's black to move, and considering the position, he concludes that white is intending queen h6 followed by mate on g7 on the next move. So he plays rook e8, threatening rook e1, which would be mate. However, rook e8 is a gross blunder, and if you want to try and spot why, then stop the video now. Okay, the answer is because white now has queen takes h7 check, and it's mate in 2 after king takes h7 because it delays the mate for as long as possible. Now rook h3 check, and king g8 is the only move, and now rook h8, which is mate. And this combination was the real threat in the original position, as opposed to the risk that the black player had been considering with queen h6 and mate on g7. And this exact combination can of course arise in many ways and form as a result of a more complicated position. For example, in this position, white is a piece behind, and unless he can win it back quickly, he's going to lose. So again, if you want to try and find the correct move, then stop the video now. Knight takes c6 is the answer, and the knight of course cannot be recaptured because of the threat that we just saw. For example, queen takes c6, now queen takes h7 check, king takes h7, rook h3 check, bishop h4. In this case it can be played, but it only delays the mate, because there's rook takes h4 check, king g8, and rook h8 is mate. So after knight takes c6, bishop g5 is black's best hope at defending, but the position is still lost because now comes knight e7 check, and queen takes e7 is the only move that prevents mate. If instead bishop takes e7, now the same combination again, and it's mate. So queen takes e7, and now the queen falls, of course. And after bishop takes e7, there's queen d7, which will win one of black's bishops and leave white with a winning advantage. After these examples, Capablanca writes, "These two examples show the danger of advancing the g-pawn one square after having castled on that side." Okay, on to the next example. Okay, in this position, white is the exchange down and must act quickly to save the game. If you want to try and spot the move, then stop the video now. White has a forced mate in 4 with knight to f6 check, and g takes f6 delays the mate for as long as possible. Black's only other option is king h8, but now queen takes h7 is mate. So g takes f6, and it's mate in 3 with queen g3 check, and black can only delay the mate now with queen g4. Now queen takes g4 check, king h8, and bishop takes f6 is mate. So let's have a look at the same setup in a more complicated position. Okay, so it's a similar position and white is easily winning. The best move here is bishop takes d7, and the reply queen takes d7 is a serious blunder, and you should be able to see why, because it's mate in 4 with a similar combination, knight f6 check, and again g takes f6 delays the mate for as long as possible. And now rook g3 check is just as effective as checking with the queen was in the last example, because again black can only delay the mate with queen g4. And now of course comes rook takes g4 check, king h8, and bishop takes f6 is mate. Okay, on to the next one. In this position, white is the exchange and a pawn down, but he's easily winning thanks to a common sacrificial attacking line. And again, if you want to try and spot it, then stop the video now. Bishop takes h7 is in fact the only move that wins for white, and it's a fairly common sacrifice, and it's known as the Greek gift sacrifice, and it's definitely something to gear your pieces towards in the opening, especially if there's no knight on f6. And black's best response here is to accept with king takes h7. If instead king h8, then queen h5 would win easily for white. So king takes h7. Now queen h5 check, and king g8 is the only move. And now comes the killer knight g5, which forces black to give up his queen in order to stop the mate at h7. So queen e4 in order to defend that square is forced, but now of course knight takes e4, and white has a queen against a rook and will win easily. So let's have a look at the same setup in a more complicated position. And again, if you want to try and spot the move, then stop the video now. Okay, the correct move is knight takes e7 check, because it clears the path for the bishop to sacrifice itself on h7. And now bishop takes e7 is best for black, because from e7 the bishop is defending against knight g5, which is going to be the follow-up move to the bishop sacrifice on h7. But now white has rook takes e7, and suddenly he's winning. Black's only hope now is to accept the material deficit and play g6 in order to stop white's attack, which just leaves white well ahead of material, and it will just be a matter of technique to win the game. But say for example if he plays knight takes e7, and now comes the powerful bishop takes h7, which forces mate no matter how black defends. We don't have time to look at all of them, but let's see what happens if he accepts the sacrifice with king takes h7. And now it's mate in 7 moves, starting with queen h5 check, king g8, and knight g5, the same theme as we saw before. And black's, well, to delay the mate for as long as possible, like his only hope is to move his rook away and give his king, you know, some room, but it only delays it, as I said, because now queen h7 check, king f8, queen h8 check, and knight g8 is the only move. Now knight h7 check, and black has 2 moves for the king, but they both result in mate in 2. For example, king e7, now rook e1 check, king d8, and queen takes g8 is mate. And after this example, Capablanca writes, "This combination is rather long and has many variations. Therefore a beginner will hardly be able to fathom it, but knowing the type of combination, he might under similar circumstances undertake and carry out a brilliant attack, which he would otherwise never think of. It will be seen that all the combinations shown have for a foundation the proper coordination of the pieces, which have all been brought to bear against a weak point." Okay, well, that's the end of the video. I hope you found it enjoyable and instructive. Thanks very much.